All right, so I am here with my friend Megan. Megan, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I am an almost 23-year-old living in Chicago. I work full time as a social media assistant at Zapwater Communications. Our agency focuses on hospitality and lifestyle brands, but we also work on fashion, beauty, real estate, and design, PR, and social. I mainly focus personally on travel and lifestyle. So, a lot of my day to day is creating content and social stuff. I also volunteer at Soul City Church on a weekly basis. I'm a Glossier representative. I also have a blog called Lincoln Park Minute that is just over 3 years old now. Um,
So
that's about
that's,
it.
yeah, so that is actually one thing that I wanted to ask you is when you got into blogging. So you said a little over 3 years ago?
Yeah, so is your question when I got into blogging? Or
Well, yeah, when
like
did you start
personally?
it? But what got you into
Sure.
blogging 3 years ago?
So personally, I started blogging January 15th of 2004. Wait, 15. January 15th of 2015. That was like the day I actually started my blog. Um, but I've followed bloggers and been into like blogging and like been very intrigued and interested in like the blogging world since about 2011, my junior year of high school. Specifically, Julia Engel of Gal Meets Glam. I've been following her literally since 2011, and actually that's the same year that she started her blog, which I didn't realize at the time. At the time, it had seemed like she had been blogging for a while already, but that was the year she started. Anyway, so yeah, it's been a little over 3 years now. I guess what got me into it in the first place is I'm very passionate about. I just love photography and I love writing and I love fashion and beauty and I love learning new things. So it just kind of seemed like a good combination of like everything that I enjoy doing. I outside of like a professional um, environment, it just was a space for me to like be creative on my own. So that's really I just like Austin and I were sitting around and I was talking about blogging or something, and he was just like, well, why don't you start a blog? And I thought about it a little more. And I was like, yeah, why don't I? Like, at the time, I mean, everyone was kind of making blogs, like 2014. I feel like everyone around like 2012, 2013, everyone started to make a blog. So I felt kind of like late to the game at that point. But, I guess it was 2015. So I felt really late to the game. But, um, yeah,
Did you plan on having such a success with your
no,
blog?
not at all. Um, I think I knew it would resonate just because there's not a lot of like bloggers in DePaul's campus, and I feel like my in my grade specifically, or in like my graduating class when we were like freshmen and sophomores when I started this, everyone like a lot of the girls in my class were like very interested in like fashion and the same things that I was, like the things that I was literally writing about. So I think it was kind of like cool. I think for them to like read what I was writing and like know that they went to school with me. Not I don't even mean that in like a like cocky way. I just think like it was
Yeah, it
interesting
was
for
relatable.
other people, right? Um, they were living in Chicago. They were also going to DePaul. Many of them were also in PR and ad majors and stuff like that. So, but no, I definitely never really planned for it to take off like it did.
So, to kind of give a little backstory, Megan, can you tell the listeners what your following is now? Like, obviously, your
Yeah, like audience
Instagram,
wise or like size or both.
like size wise, because your Instagram, I know you have, what is it, 23,000 or
21,400
21,000?
right now, but it's definitely decreasing because I'm not focusing on engagement too much at all, really, lately,
But
just because my job is taking precedent.
yeah, so how did you build that following?
Yeah, so to be quite honest, it was very, very different before the algorithm, and it seems like before the Instagram algorithm changed, and it seems like very weird to like think that way, but because I feel like that was like so long ago now, but um, I feel like it was a lot easier to just like grow a natural following. And to be quite honest, like when the algorithm changed, my growth very much halted. Like very much halted, like came to like a screeching stop. Not just like slowly decline. Now it's kind of slowly declining, but like right when the Instagram algorithm changed, everything changed. Like it was so much harder to create like natural conversation like on my post or other people's, and like to engage with your followers or other followers. So I think how I grew my following was the Instagram algorithm was a lot easier
But
beforehand.
so we can get into the Instagram algorithm a little bit more later, but I ask, like, did you follow a lot of accounts? Did you do it, like, how did you encourage people to follow you?
I engaged a lot on my posts and other people's. I also followed a lot of people that were like I felt would be interested in content similar to mine. So whether they were like following a blogger who I felt was similar to me, like I follow them and try to create a conversation with them and literally message them and like say like I hope that, you know, here's my blog, I hope you enjoy it, check it out, whatever. And just like create not friendships but just like literally engage with people. Especially on my own posts and content. My content wasn't really that pretty in the beginning, but I was definitely trying to like make something look somewhat aesthetic, because I think now there's a huge focus on like having an aesthetic and it looking more attractive. But I think even back then, like content was just, I mean, content will always be important, but I think there was like a lot that used to be a really large reason. Part of the reason why someone would follow you is because like they liked your look and feel, and it's still like relevant to this day. So I think like creating something that just like looked like fun and relatable at the same time, like it never seemed like too out of
so
reach.
that goes perfectly right into my next question, is with branding. And obviously at work you build brands for companies, and you build that aesthetic. So did you have a process when you started your blog? Like, did you make mood boards, or did you, like, how did you plan to build your brand?
So at first I definitely didn't really know like what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be in terms of like my blog, but I think it kind of came naturally after like 6 months or like the first year of like blogging, kind of just like could feel it. And I think part of my brand, it's weird because my branding is like very different now than what it used to be. I think what it used to be was like a lot more like college oriented and a lot more color, a lot more like fun, and just like a lot more colorful for sure. I don't really like know why in particular, but I think the one thread though that has always been with me is I feel like I've upheld my integrity quite a bit in terms of like my honesty with my readers, both on Instagram and on my website. So just being honest about the products that I'm reviewing, or being honest about topics like anxiety, like just anything like that. So I think that's definitely been like a big part of my branding, is being honest and relatable and just like real and raw, and like not, you know, claiming that my life is perfect, because it's definitely not. But yeah, I didn't really have a plan. To answer your question, I didn't really have a plan necessarily. I kind of just would eyeball it, honestly. I like knew I would like strategically post things on like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and like schedule out posts. If like I had written a blog post, like I'd strategically like push it out on a weekly basis to make sure that it was getting read and stuff, because that's obviously how it gets traction. Like people aren't really just like typing in your blog name, like they go to your blog because you're pushing it on social media. So stuff like that, I definitely had a plan. But in terms of like Instagram so much, I didn't really have a plan. Like I was just kind of sharing whatever I wanted.
Would you? Yeah, you just kind of
I definitely planned my blog content. I definitely plan my blog content. I always have when I get ideas, and like a lot of stuff seasonal too, right? Or like some stuff is sponsored, so like there's a timeline for that. So I've always just kind of kept like a note on my computer of just like January, February, and like what days I want to post, and like what blog posts I want to be written about and stuff. And that way too, I can kind of visualize like that my blog is a balance of beauty and lifestyle, or back then it was a balance of fashion and travel, or whatever it is. So I've always planned that way. In the beginning, I said I didn't plan my Instagram content, which is true, but now I definitely do. I use the app.
I was going to ask what your transition kind of has been, because
so I'd say the transition probably started like the beginning of last year. I just literally like January 1, I just started to care a lot more like about what my Instagram feed looked like, almost to like an obsessive point. So like aesthetic, and you know, the way that colors are threading throughout my feed, and like is there a balance of me in my feed, or is there not enough me in my feed, like what photos are performing best and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm actually like letting up on it a little bit. I kind of don't really care what my feed looks like, um, but I do still kind of plan out my content, timing wise and stuff, not so much like look anymore.
Cool.
But
so from there, I know you mentioned sponsored posts and the kind of thought process that goes into that. So how do you typically work with brands? Do you reach out to them, or have you reached out to them, or do you wait for them to ask you to be an ambassador?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say about 75% of the opportunities that I've received since becoming a blogger have come organically to me, being pitched, whether that's over Instagram DM, email, or like a friend connecting me with a brand or something like that. And then the other 25% has been me reaching out to them and me pitching them. To be honest, I don't have a lot of time to pitch brands or like come up with a collaboration like idea on my own. But if there is a brand that I really, really believe in and feel like we would be a very natural fit working together, I'll totally take the time out of my day or week to pitch them. But in terms of what that looks like, it really depends brand to brand, and then it also really depends on like payment or stuff like that.
So with payment, do you have like a set rate when a company asks you to do, like if they pitch to you and say they want to do 10 Instagram stories and 1 feed post, do you have a price, or is that something that is negotiable?
Do you want my honest answer?
Well, of course I want your honest answer, because so obviously the point of this podcast is to be informational for small businesses or startups or bloggers like you, so they can use this information of someone who's been successful locally.
My honest answer is that it depends on the brand, and it also depends on the company. So this is kind of like not really that great of me, but to be honest, like if it's a larger brand, like I don't know, I'm trying to even think of one. I don't know, like Free People,
okay,
or like even something more corporate like Philips toothbrushes or something like that. I know they have a big budget. So I'm not going to go super out of my ballpark, but I will kind of counter them with something that's a little bit higher because, frankly, I just know they have the budget, and that's also something I know because I work in the industry. If it's a smaller brand or like they are a startup and I believe in them, I'm totally willing to do it for free, or even for a lower rate, or even for free.
Or for their like an exchange of product or something.
Right, exactly. I do a lot for trade still, particularly in beauty, because I just want to try the product. And honestly, a lot of beauty products are like quite expensive, so the trade value is actually there if you like consider it monetarily. But yeah, I would say there's definitely like a kind of like a range that I try to stay between, and I never really like came up with that myself. I gauged it based off of like what other people started to offer me, and then I found that was kind of consistent across a few like sponsorships or collaborations, and I was like, I guess if these like 3 or 4 brands are offering me like similar amounts, I should probably just like stick with that across the board, and it's worked out pretty well.
Okay, cool. So kind of changing pace, I want to go back and talk about the Instagram algorithm, because I know we've talked about it a little bit, and you obviously sound a little frustrated about it, which I think anyone listening understands. It has changed, and I think everybody has heard someone talk about how frustrating it is, especially when you run a business from an Instagram account, which a lot of people do. So I know you said that you don't focus on it too much anymore, but have you done anything in particular to stay relevant in a world of Instagram influencers and the algorithm? Because I know obviously the algorithm has a large effect on it, but there's also a lot of people who are either doing what you do as a blogger or who are trying to do that. So how do you stay like fresh and like relevant?
Yeah, well, the first thing is I feel like what the algorithm did is kept all the small people small, and all the really, really, really big top tier bloggers that have like millions of followers or close to millions of followers or 500,000 followers like there, which sucks, because then those people, like you said, who like want to be where I am like can't get there, or the people that are where I am lose followers and stuff like that. So first of all, I think that just like has made it really tough. Like I feel like it's just kind of put the pause button on for a lot of people.
And even if they're not like passion bloggers like you
Right.
started because you were passionate about it, but if they're someone
who are relying on
yeah,
it.
and they're if they're running it as a business, like it's their photography account for something like that. So obviously that's frustrating.
Yeah. But to answer your question about like staying fresh, I think I've just like become very unapologetically myself, like visually and verbally, and I've found that that's kind of helped a lot, to be honest, because it's like I think it's actually like engaging my audience more because again, like they can relate to it most of the time, or like they just simply like admire the fact that I'm being like honest. I also think that stories have just been such a huge thing. It's a really great way to like start conversation and kind of like get back to that old like community and like engagement aspect of Instagram that like really existed before the algorithm. I think it's so fun to like post, even if it's just about beauty products, and like post about stuff that I'm loving, and then people will reply back, and like we're having a back and forth conversation about like what they love and what I love, or if they want recommendations or stuff like that. So I think that that's been a really good way to kind of stay fresh, especially because a lot of people are simply, I don't know if it was with you or another friend that I had this conversation with the other day. I think it might have been someone else, but we were talking about how you literally, people will just like scroll through their stories and then it was my coworkers, and then they don't even really look at their feed anymore. They look at their feed for like 2 minutes because they just spent so much time on stories that they don't even want to be on Instagram anymore. So I think stories is like really crucial, especially for small businesses. It's also like people like kind of like the behind the scenes and like aspect of stories. I think, at least in terms of like small businesses or bloggers, I think people just think it's like kind of interesting to see like a different aspect of like their daily business or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that's helped. I don't really know what else.
Well, I like that answer. So it kind of transitions into my last question is, would you have any advice for a small business who is trying to do it? Because obviously you work in an industry where you have clients that are small businesses who maybe never had an Instagram before they hired your company. So what are some techniques that you would suggest they start applying to their personal accounts or to their business accounts?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, you definitely need to create a strategy. Like if you're trying to grow your business, or even if you're just trying to grow your social media channels for your business, you're not going to be able to do so without a strategy. So you need to think about, what does your content look like? What is your brand voice on social media? Because that might be a little different than your, like how you think about it in like a business and like sales sense and like marketing. I think you need to think about like your brand voice and like the look and feel. I already said the brand voice, I meant look and feel. So like what kind of content are you going to post? What is like it gonna feel like? What do you want your followers?
Like what is your message?
Right.
Trying
like I think
to be?
Yeah. And I think you like need to think about what you want people to like leave your page like feeling or thinking. Outside of just like using your business or buying your product. So I think that's really important, just creating an overall strategy. And I think that's fairly easy to do, even if you haven't studied or like participated in social media very much, because it's really just like,
it's like, the mission of your brand,
yeah,
obviously.
And it's just like basic things like how often are we going to post, and on what channels are we going to post, and what channels are most important to us. Like, because is it Facebook? Is it Twitter? What about LinkedIn? Like what, who are we kind of trying to hit, and think about your audience too. So I definitely recommend just kind of like trying to create a strategy in terms of like what content you're going to post, what it's going to feel like, what it's going to look like, how often, stuff like that, and just being consistent with it too. And I'd also really recommend engaging with like similar accounts. Even though the algorithm sucks, I find that commenting and like following other accounts does help get new followers when you have like the time to dedicate to it. Even if it's just like 30 minutes a day, it does help a lot.
In regards to content, do you have any recommendations? Because obviously on your personal, like you kind of just post things that are relevant to what you're doing or whatever is going on. But if for your like business accounts that you do at work, like do you recommend like certain, like following certain like campaign styles, like building a hashtag or like different things like that?
Yeah, so I'd say having a branded hashtag is always really, really smart. Something ideally that's going to be unique, but memorable enough and short enough.
Do you have one for your personal account?
I don't. I've used Lincoln Park Minute, but not really like in a way that.
Do you use hashtags at all on your posts? Like,
yes.
Okay.
I do.
That was one thing I wanted to ask earlier and I forgot, because obviously I know most people who are listening will understand the concept of a hashtag. But Megan, how have hashtags like helped your awareness?
Yeah, I mean, to even show you, like, one of my most recent posts, I got 45 impressions, which isn't a lot, but I got 45 impressions just from hashtags on that post, which is like a considerable amount. That's enough.
And if you have a business account on Instagram, that's something that you can see, correct?
Yes, exactly, under insights. So if you're not using hashtags, it's just kind of like
are you missing those 45 impressions?
Right, exactly. And it's going to depend on the size of your account, but and what hashtags you use. Of course, I use the same ones every time. I would recommend, if you're a brand, depending on what you're posting about, to vary them up every few posts. I don't do that just because I'm lazy, but for my businesses at work and clients at work, I do vary it up quite a bit, especially within like the travel and food realms, because there's so many to use that why would you not, you know? Whereas for blogging, I feel like I'm kind of limited to a certain set anyways. But yeah, if you're not using hashtags, you're kind of missing out on those impressions, and there's just no reason not to. It doesn't take very long to do.